So people who live by their highest values are more likely to live the individual path, and people who live by lower values are more likely to live the collective path. If you make tomatoes and grow tomatoes, and I build a house, and I say, well, I'll build you a house, but I don't want 100,000 bushels of tomatoes. I can't eat that many tomatoes. And that goes into having money work for you instead of you working for it all your life. You become its master, not its slave. The purpose of financial independence is for you to be able to do what you love because you love doing it, not because you have to.
Welcome to another episode of Property Lunch with Giuseppe. Now, today, we're going to talk about property, but we're going to talk mainly about business and the people behind the business, because any business is run by people. And if the person and the people don't work, then the business cannot work either. So today I have the pleasure to have as my guest, Dr. John Demartini. He is one of the most inspiring teachers, speakers, writers, and leaders as well. He is the creator of the Demartini Institute and also a best-selling author of many books, over 40 books translated in many languages all over the globe. And two of the most famous books are The Breakthrough Experience and The Value Factor. John, if I may ask you, what was the shift for you when you started to be a human behavior specialist? Because you're interested in human behavior, but why, in what age did you have this shift for you to say, this is my vocation?
I was 17 years old. I was living in Hawaii.
Okay.
I had learning difficulties as a child. I was told in first grade I would probably never be able to read, write, communicate, never amount to thing, never go very far in life. I had dropped out of school. I was living in Hawaii in a tent, surfing.
Okay.
Had been living on the streets as a teenager. And one night, one man named Paul Bragg, I attended a class he gave, and he inspired me that night to think that maybe I could overcome my learning problems and eventually learn to read properly. And that was the night I had a dream to become a teacher that would travel the world.
Mm-hmm.
So really my dream started then.
Okay.
I had to go back. I studied with him for a while, and then I eventually flew back to Los Angeles and hitchhiked back to Texas. Took a GED, tried to go back to school,
Mm-hmm.
initially failed, had to learn by reading a dictionary and increase my vocabulary with the help of my mom, where we studied 30 words a day until my vocabulary was strong enough to pass.
Mm-hmm.
I then learned to pass. I started to excel. I started picking up students at age 18, wanting to ask me questions because I was so determined to learn. And I guess my teaching career has been going on for soon will be 49 years. And I've been blessed to now travel to 154 countries speaking. And we've reached a lot of people, over billions of people now. And so that was my dream. That's when I first started to do it. I wanted to study teaching. I want to be a teacher and studying healing, philosophy, and human behavior. So I studied all those areas. I still study all those areas. I never stopped learning. And I love writing. I've written, well over 100 books. 40 of them are out there, little self-help books, but deeper books or textbooks. Mm-hmm. And I love researching and writing and traveling and teaching. That's the things I do most.
So basically one of the setbacks inspired you to grow and to overcome that challenge. And it's all about perception, I guess, because we can see the challenge as a big tall wall and then just give up, or say, okay, how can I overcome this challenge? And that's what you did, basically.
Yeah, well, I think that you can become a victim of your history or a master of your destiny.
Yeah.
You can say thank you for what's happening or feel futility. It's all based on perception. We have control over our perception, decisions, and actions.
Yeah.
And whatever happens to us doesn't determine our destiny. It's how we perceive it, what we decide to do with it, and how we act upon it.
Yeah.
So I was quite blessed to be able to meet the right people, be at the right places, the right time, to catalyze a different view of how my life was.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that the voids in my life that were the challenges were the gifts. And so I always say that if you can't say thank you for your life, you've got baggage. If you can say thank you for your life, you've got fuel. And I was blessed to turn the challenges, which are really perfect gifts to do what I'm doing today, into opportunities. I try my best to do that with other people, because sometimes people want to run their story and be victims of their history. Instead of stop the story and ask us a different set of questions. Quality of our life is based on the quality of questions we ask.
Yeah.
And if we're asked the right questions and become conscious of that which has been unconscious and become fully conscious, we see opportunity. We don't see setback. Because sometimes we initially think something's terrible, and a day, a week, a month, a year, 5 years later, we actually find the terrific in it. But why have the wisdom of the ages with the aging process when you can have the wisdom of the ages without it? Just ask the right question now and reveal to you the opportunities that are sitting there, and then take advantage of them.
Totally agree with that. And I think from the experience that I have, lots of people think that probably when you solve a problem, then you don't have any more challenges. But in reality, we are constantly exposed to stimuli and challenges. It's just how we perceive them. If we just say, okay, this is too much for me, or if it says, yeah, this is part of the process, this is part of my learning process, I need to go through the challenge to understand and to grow as a person. And this is something that inspires me a lot as well. Another thing that I've noticed is I like to do this 10 years exercise. The 10 years exercise that I mentioned to my students as well is we always look at ourselves in the mirror and we think, oh, I wish I was 10 years younger. And we constantly do that. 10 years ago, when we look at a picture, for example, 10 years ago, I was able to do this and this and this. Oh, I'm now old. And then I try to project them and to do this 10 years exercise. It says, okay, now close your eyes. Imagine now you are 10 years older and you are exactly in the same position. You look at yourself in the mirror and you think, oh, I wish I was 10 years younger. Now open your eyes. You are 10 years younger. So here we go. Make the most of the present, because otherwise we always, look back and we forget about living the present.
Well, we only have the now.
Yes.
The imagination and memories can be distortions and subjective biases and can hold us imprisoned instead of being present, which liberates us and allows us to maximize our potential. That's why I tell people to, every single moment, ask yourself, what's the highest priority perception, decision, and action I can make at this moment to help me fulfill what's most deeply meaningful? If you do that on a moment-to-moment basis, amazing lives can be unfolded. But if you are holding on to a fantasy about how life used to be or what it hopes to be, instead of getting present with what's actually in front of you now, you'll probably distort your responses and not become profoundly resourceful in the moment with what's happening. Mm-hmm. So I think it's wise to prioritize life. If you don't fill your day with high priority actions that inspire you, your day is designed to be filled up with low priority distractions that don't. Mm-hmm. And most people are wallowing in the lower priority things that devalue them instead of being, present with the things that are really inspiring to them, that make them have the greatest self-worth.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the videos that I watched about one of your interviews. I remember you mentioned about the difference between motivation and inspiration, which for many people might sound the same, but in reality, I remember you said that one comes from within, which is the inspiration, and the other one comes from the outside So is the motivation. The motivation can keep you going just for a little bit, but then we'll run out. So you need that kind of inspiration from the inside to make you do things that other people may perceive as huge things. And for you, it's just natural.
Yeah. Well, every human being lives with a set of priorities, a set of values, things that are most down to least important in their life, or less at least. Whatever's highest, very highest on the value list is considered an intrinsic value, which means that you are spontaneously inspired from within to act and attempt to fulfill it. Whatever's lower on the values progressively requires more and more external motivation, extrinsic motivation, which is reward if you do it, punishment if you don't, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And therefore you are dependent and literally lead to a dependent life when you live by lower values. And the most common reasons for living by lower values is the comparison to other people and putting people on pedestals and minimizing yourself and trying to live in other people's values, which isn't really highest on yours. Yeah. That's why Ralph Waldo Emerson said, envy is ignorance and imitation is suicide. Mm-hmm. So the second we identify what's really valuable to us, the thing that our life demonstrates is spontaneously inspiring to us, that we can't wait to get up in the morning and do, that is deeply meaningful and that wants to be solution-oriented and humanitarian service-oriented, we've found our niche where we'll excel, because we do require the interaction with other people to have fulfillment, and the contribution of service to those individuals in a sustainable, fair exchange manner is one of the most powerful things we can do. And that liberates us and remunerates us enough to be able to have enough income to be able to delegate lower priority things so we can stay on an inspired path. Yeah. But a young boy who loves video games doesn't need to be motivated to do his games. Mm-hmm. I've been teaching for 48 and a half years. And I can tell you, and anybody who knows me will tell you, that I have not required any form of external motivation in all those years to do what I love doing. I spontaneously research, I spontaneously write, and I spontaneously teach. So finding what that's out, delegating everything off your plate, except that, gives you a life of inspiration. Mm-hmm. But if for some reason you feel that you're living by duty, not design, and you feel that you have to fill in for the herd and live by conformity instead of enormity, and try to, sacrifice what's deeply meaningful to you to fit in instead of stand out, you're going to lower your self-image, scatter yourself, lower your self-worth, and end up doing a whole bunch of multitasking things that scatter your potential instead of actually prioritize onto the one thing, as Gary Keller says, that liberates you, that you can build momentum around and build a brand around, so you don't have to live vicariously through other people's brands and overpay for things that you think are going to give you temporary motivation and esteem. Yeah. So I'm a firm believer in doing something that's deeply meaningful on a daily basis so you can live an inspired life.
Yeah, I love that book by Gary Keller. I remember the first two pages say there was a Chinese proverb: if you chase two rabbits, you catch neither of them, which is true. And we tend to do a lot of things and then complete none of them. And the one thing is one of the things that I generally try to focus on and then move to the next one. Now, we touched on a few topics that I'm very interested. One is the comparison trap, when we compare ourselves with other people. And the other one is the value, and the other one is the self-worth. Now, let's move step by step on this. Now, the comparison trap, why is there so many people will stay stuck in the comparison trap and think they have a similar life to somebody else, when we're all unique. We all have a unique fingerprint, and still we tend to compare ourselves to others and feel upset. So what can we do?
Well, I mean, there's many ways of approaching this answer. I believe this is just at least one. I could probably come up with many. I know I could. thousands of years ago, there's some evidence that we were more nomadic. And so some man and woman and child out there and living as hunting and gathering, as long as there was abundance of food, they tend to survive. But sometimes they run out of food, or the weather would change or whatever. They found themselves, some were more able to survive than others, and they found more effectiveness when they worked in groups. So then families developed, and kinship, and then tribal gatherings, and then eventually townships, and eventually communities and cities, and eventually states and nations. And as this happened, we went to a sedentary agricultural life, planting instead of gathering. Specialties emerged, divisions of labor occurred. We became more dependent on everybody else's specialty because we forgot how to do all the basic things to survive. We went from multitasking to more, fewer tasks, eventually specialized tasks. But that made us more dependent on everybody else for doing everything else. Mm-hmm. So as a result of it, we became less focused and aware on all those general principles and dependent on other people. So we're used to relying on other people for a lot of the stuff that we don't know. And we tend to then look at where they're at in their position socioeconomically. We actually have areas in the brain that are involved in social hierarchies, the entorhinal complex and the place and grid cells of the in the hippocampus area. Mm-hmm. And so what happens, we tend to put people up on pedestals if we think they've got a more advantage than we do. We tend to put them in pits if we think we got more advantage than they do. And so comparison, if we thought they had a better advantage, we would use our mirror neurons and have sort of a chameleon effect and kind of copy what they would do and try to envy them and imitate them. If not, we would lead the way and people try to copy us. And so comparison became kind of a way of our experience. And anybody that stood out was usually banished and exiled from the group. Mm-hmm. There was a strong force to fit into the group as a collective consciousness. Ernest Becker, in his Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Denial of Death, said that human beings fear death, right? They fear the physical death. And they create all kind of immortality pathways to try to compensate for that anxiety. And one of them is a collective path, the other is an individual path. And majority of people follow the collective path, and very few people have the courage to walk a different path and be an unborrowed visionary, and to walk according to their own highest values, where they're most objective and they have most confidence and they're the leader. When I was in school, I had the top grades. And so there's nobody to copy. The people that didn't have the top grades, they would want to copy and cheat and look on your paper. But I had nobody to look at. So I was the individual path. Majority of other people relied on other people. So people who live by their highest values are more likely to live the individual path. And people who live by lower values are more likely to live the collective path. And the majority of people do not give themselves permission to step out of the collective path into an individual path, because the fear of rejection and abolishment and abandonment and rejection and exile and all those other things. So people try to fit in and lose their own individuality. And I would rather have the whole world against me than my own soul, is an old proverb. I think that the path of the individual has always been the enlightened path and the path of innovation. They're the misfits, as Apple, Steve Jobs mentioned. And so I'm a firm believer that if you don't give yourself permission to stand out, you're going to fit in. And if you fit in, you're going to live in comparison, and you're going to be putting people on pedestals and pits instead of putting them in your heart. The only way out of the comparison game is to have enough reflective awareness to see that whatever you perceive in others, you have within yourself. Yeah. And therefore introspection and asking questions to reveal to you where you're too humble or too proud to admit what you see in others inside you, but to look again and discover it. When you do, you liberate yourself from the comparison, and you give yourself permission to walk the path of a leader.
I love this. I love this. Give yourself permission. It's something that we forget very often to do. This is spot on. Thanks, Dr. Demartini. One of the questions about values came up in our conversation quite a lot of times, and I've done the value determination exercise on your website, and that helped me a lot because it's like I didn't have a destination. So until I done this exercise, then I kind of seen where I was heading to. And if you haven't done, by the way, to the audience, just go and Google value determination exercise, and you will see it. And basically, it will rank your values according to what you're doing and what you want to do. And I remember mine haven't changed in the last 3 years. So my top two values, there are many, of course, but my top two is family and the freedom of choice. So and the number three is teaching and providing. So I still stand by these three values, and these values drive my life constantly every single day. And when I didn't feel that I was living based on these values, I felt trapped and I felt like stressed, and I ended up to the hospital twice with the ambulance because I wasn't living the life that I wanted to live. You are brave if you decide to step out of that comfort zone and say, no, this is not me. I want to do what I want to do, not what somebody else is telling me to do. And as long as you live by your values, and I totally agree, as long as you live by your values, then your life will get much, much, much easier. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The website is drdemartini.com.
Yeah.
And it says determine your values. There's a section on it. And it's about a 30-minute process, maybe 40 minutes for some people. And it's a series of 13 questions that you narrow down the answers to. And you have to be honest with yourself. If you lie with the answers, your results will be exactly what you're putting into it. But if you look honestly at what your life is demonstrating, it can help you determine what's really important to you. And whatever's highest on your values when it's all done is the area that's intrinsically driven. And that's where you're going to excel. That's where you're going to do the greatest service. That's the competitive advantage that Ricardo described that you're going to have, the competitive, advantage in the market. And if you give yourself permission to do that, you'll have an inspired life. I know what mine is. I don't waste my time on anything but that.
Yeah.
Mine is teaching. I do that every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I surrounded myself with people that I delegated things to that would love to do the things that I'm wanting to delegate. And that way I'm freed. I don't have to micromanage. They do their job. I do my job. I get to do what I love. They get to do what they love. And we create a chain reaction that helps the economy, that allows us all to work more efficiently, doing something that we can't wait to get up in the morning and do. And I say, when you can't wait to get up in the morning and do what it is you love, people can't wait to get the service. And if you do it in a way that serves other people in a sustainable, equitable, fair exchange, transaction-based, you won't have narcissism projecting your values onto others. You won't have altruism sacrificing your values for others. You'll have an equanimity within you and an equity between you and others in such a way that you both are winning. You have a non-zero sum game instead of a zero sum game. And here is where maximum potential is obtained. And because you have an income coming from it and you can delegate it, you're liberated and your self-worth goes up. And you end up with more profit because you're extracting surplus labor value out of other people doing the things you want to delegate. And that goes into having money work for you instead of you working for it all your life. You become its master, not its slave. The purpose of financial independence is for you to be able to do what you love because you love doing it, not because you have to. Live by design, not duty.
Financial independence is something that comes up a lot, especially in business and property business. I'm involved in property and financial independence and financial freedom. Some people call it. It comes up a lot, but very few understand the real meaning of this. And it's not about money. I always say it's not about money. Money is just a vehicle. Money, it allows you to do something else, and it amplifies what you already are. So it doesn't matter the nature of your business, it matters where you want to go with your business. Now, I want to ask, how important is mindset in, for example, starting or running a successful business, and why?
Well, a business is a sustainable, fair, transactional exchange. That's it. If you help other people get what they want to get in life, they help you get what you want to get in life. And what you're doing is you're using money. At one time, there was bartering, right? Somebody did something else, they exchanged it. But that was not the most efficient pathway. So eventually they created a currency, a source of money that was a common denominator that everybody could go to the market and sell whatever their goods are to make a common thing so they could increase the probability of sustainable fair exchange. And so money became a necessary component to do so, because bartering, if you make tomatoes and grow tomatoes and I build a house and I say, well, I'll build you a house, but I don't want 100,000 bushels of tomatoes. I can't eat that many tomatoes. So you got to go and sell your tomatoes, get some money, and then pay me to build the house. So, and I'll build you the house. And when I go buy the wood, they don't want my people that can build a house and their children. They want money.
Yeah.
So money would become the most efficient system. So when you're building a business, your mind, if you exaggerate yourself and minimize your customer and your employees, you'll have, in a sense, a kind of an autocratic system where people are not being fulfilled, and you're going to have to use a tremendous amount of motivation to get them to buy. Mm-hmm. And you have to do motivation, which is the least effective and efficient way of getting people to work. And if you minimize yourself, you'll sacrifice and have anarchy in the business instead of over control. You'll have under control. And again, you will now give away your profits. So exaggerating or minimizing yourself will not give you the greatest result. But having a sustainable fair exchange and caring about your customer, not careless, looking down on them, not careful, walking on eggshells, but caring, where you realize that you have a mission, they have a mission, you're now going to try to find out how both can win and your employees can win. No employee goes to work for the sake of a company. They go to work to fulfill what they value most. If their job description and the mission of the company helps them fulfill what they value, they can't wait to go to work. They're engaged. And that is increasing the probability of then a customer wanting to be with them. Okay. So meeting the customer's needs in a fair way and meeting the employees' needs in the way gives a competitive advantage in the marketplace. So mindset and the results in business are inseparable. There's no way you can separate those. I've seen autocrats narcissistically assume, and young entrepreneurs think, I know what the market needs. Mm-hmm. And then they get humbled before the fall. Yeah. And others sacrifice and they never receive enough money to pay the bills. There has to be a sustainable fair exchange, which means you have to really care about the customer to know what their highest dominant buying motives are, what their needs are, and then making sure you deliver the most effective and efficient service or product that meets that need. And that's called caring. Business is caring. And caring is a reflection of living by your highest values, where you're most objective and most neutral and most fair in your exchanges. So there is a mindset component to every business, unquestionably.
Love this one. I love this one. Right. So the unfulfillment that we discussed before is based on the self-worth. And there's so many people that live a life that is unfulfilled and then they realize when it's too late. So what kind of tips and advice can we give to our audience to wake up?
Let me elaborate on something here. I differentiate self-worth from self-esteem. Mm-hmm. I consider self-esteem a fickle one, self-worth a more stable one. So let's say I meet somebody on the street and I admire them and I look up to them. And then I compare myself to them and I minimize myself to the degree that I exaggerate them. Now I'm lowering my self-esteem. I'm creating a mask and persona and facade of who I am, which is deflated. And I'm creating a mask and a facade and you might say a persona about them that is inflated. So I'm exaggerating them, minimizing me. I'm not being authentic, and I'm not seeing the authentic them because they're not that individual. I've just exaggerated them. Or I might walk in the mall and see somebody I might look down on and resent. And now I exaggerate myself, puff myself up. I inflate myself in my persona. And now I have a elevated self-esteem relative to my perception of this individual. So I feel better about myself when I look down on him, and I feel worse about myself when I'm looking up at him. Now, what I'm looking down on is not that individual. It's just that I'm now perceiving, and I'm conscious of the downsides, and I'm unconscious of the upsides of them. And then I become conscious of my upsides and forget and be unconscious of my downsides of me. So both of those are polarized perceptions which elevate or suppress self-esteem. But if I actually look and what I see in them, I look, where do I display what I see in them? And I have reflective awareness, and I level the playing field where I have the highest probability of equity in my relationships with them and caring, not careless or careful. I bring those two self-esteems into equilibrium, which is my true self-worth. My true self-worth is the synthesis of the elevated and suppressed self-esteems, the prides and shames that I carry around. And pride attracts systems that bring it down, pride before the fall, and humility before the rise.
Mm-hmm.
And those are two negative feedback loops trying to get me into my authenticity. I really believe that everything that goes on in our psychology, physiology, and sociology is nothing more than a mechanism to guide us back to authenticity, where our true self-worth is. Now, the moment we're authentic with our true self-worth, that occurs when we're most objective in our assessment of the world, not subjectively biased. That occurs when we're living by our highest value. Whenever we live by our highest value, the blood glucose and oxygen goes into the forebrain, where we have the executive function, where we have the most governance of the emotional swings of the amygdala, and where we're able to see things and assess things most fairly. So our self-worth occurs whenever we live by our highest value, and our self-worth becomes polarized and volatile and bipolar the second we live in lower values. So it's so important to, when we compare ourselves to others and put them on pedestals and minimize ourselves, we go down the value list. When we have somebody that we look down on and they challenge us, we tend to go up the value list. But when we actually live by the highest priority, we tend to stabilize and not judge. Yeah. Empedocles, the Greek philosopher, said there's love and there's strife. When we live by our highest values, we move towards loving our life. And when we live in our lower values, we tend to have internal strife because we're constantly comparing ourselves to others instead of comparing our daily actions to our highest value. That's why living by highest priority means we know what our highest value is, we know what our priorities are, we stick to them.
Oh, thank you. I'm processing all the information as well. That's amazing. One last question, Dr. Demartini, is what is your vision? What is your plan for the next 6-12 months?
Well, I've been doing teaching for 48 and a half years, and I don't have any intention to stop that. I will continue to teach in whatever possible vehicle emerges. I do radio, television, newspapers, magazines, podcasts, webinars, Clubhouse, movies, books, every possible vehicle that I'm able to share information on, I use. I will continue to do that. I get new opportunities. A new movie came in a couple of days ago. Every week is new opportunities. We've done 54, almost, there'll be soon 55 movies out. So I'm constantly using whatever social media, whatever other media, whatever vehicles in the network of opportunities, affiliations, working with podcasts and universities, anywhere where we can disseminate information that might assist people in mastering their lives, I will continue to do that. And some of those I can see right now, and I already have plans for. Some will come in today and tomorrow. There'll be new opportunities that I don't know yet. But ultimately, the primary objective is to continue to research. So I will continue to research and write and teach and then soon be back in traveling. I mean, I've been more stationary and been on Zoom more, traveling on Zoom, but I'll probably be doing more traveling towards the end of the year next year.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. I look forward to meeting you in the UK or anywhere else in the world as soon as everything is open again. Right, so thank you so much for this interview, Dr. Demartini. I really appreciate your time and your value to this interview. For anybody that wants to comment below this video, just type your questions there and we will forward everything so we can get your questions answered. And I just wish you good luck with your future projects, and I hope to see you soon.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. Thank you for the questions. And whoever's listening, give yourself permission to shine, not shrink. And give yourself permission to be the authentic you. The magnificence of who you truly are is far greater than any fantasies you'll ever impose on yourself.
Thank you very much. See you soon then. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.